But then I ran upon the idea that the brain can change, heal itself. That was new to me. Doctors never once told me that things could improve. It was more like, okay, you'll be on medications for the rest of your life. You need to accept with how you're feeling, so on and so forth. And something at that time, I didn't want to accept that. I was going through the hamster wheel of doctor's appointments, bouncing from one to the next, and they would tell me the same thing. And when I found out the brain can change and heal itself, it was like a spark for me. I was like, okay, there is the science of neuroplasticity that does say that I don't have to be stuck where I am with my stuttering. I couldn't speak. I was impulsive. I was depressed, just a complete wreck. But that was the spark that I needed to get me to where I am today.
So I have a question. What is a neural transformation?
Great question. A neural transformation is a transformation that is made through you creating new neural pathways.
So is it similar or maybe even the same as neuroplasticity?
Yeah, right on the same idea and pathway.
Let's just say I passed out and had a concussion really bad. What are you going to do with me?
The first thing I'm going to tell you is what happened. Is what happened to your brain. It was moving violently back and forth, accelerating and decelerating. So I'd explain to you that it's quite often most injuries occur to the front of the head, which is the frontal lobe. Explain to you what are the characteristics and symptoms you may be experiencing. Explain to you that the white matter, the axons, we have two brain cells that are communicating with each other. The white matter, the axons, get stretched and sheared out. So essentially, we need to make a new path for you. We need to make, it's just like a highway that got blocked off, essentially. That pathway is under construction, and we have to create a new pathway for you to do the same signals. So my specialty is brain rehabilitation. So if you're not functioning the way you would like to, I want to get you back to baseline, whatever that may look like for you. And then from baseline, we can move on to higher performance.
Hello. We're with special guest today, Dr. Brody Miller. He's joining us, and I'm so glad you're here, man. How you doing, doctor?
I'm awesome, Carl. I appreciate you having me. It's been a long journey to get here, but I'm glad to be in places like this, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, I've been following you for quite a while. I love the work you do. Love the posts that you put up because they're educational, informational, really helpful for a lot of people, and you've been doing so much great work, and I'm particularly fascinated with the brain in general. And, I'll just talk for a minute. Anyone who listens to the show knows that I used to drink a lot, that was really a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, those days are done, and I don't ever have the urge to drink at all. Although I tend to have addicted tendencies.
Yeah.
Like hot peppers, coffee, probably learning, I'm a geek, man. I'm nerding out all the time on books and audio books and podcasts and listening to you and watching you. And it's really, those are my healthy addictions, I'd say, or healthier anyways. But I always wondered if you would just give me a little background about you. What do you do, and how did you come to the place where you're doing all this great work now, helping people with brain health?
Sure, yeah. So really, I'll start from the bottom. So I'm from a little town in North Carolina called Weaverville, and I always kind of felt out of place growing up. I was one of the only Jewish kids in my high school. And that manifested initially into a desire to fit in. And so originally I did that through sports, and I was pretty good at sports. But then after getting cut from the high school basketball team, I lost my avenue. Thus, there came the addiction. It became drugs and alcohol and basically anything that I could do to get people's attention. And so in my early college years, my addictions got worse. I ended up actually, I'm not proud of this, but I got into selling drugs and alcohol. Selling drugs, hard drugs and stuff like that. And fast forward to about 11 years ago, I ended up getting into a fight with a bouncer in the middle of the street. He knocked me out, and to add insult to the injury, it was all caught on video. And so this was before virality was a thing, but it went absolutely viral. Local news TV stations broadcasted me getting knocked out by this gargantuan looking dude. And one could say it was the wrong place at the wrong time, but if I'm being 100% honest, I was making horrible decisions and I put myself in that situation. And so fast forward a few years after that incident and it being broadcasted on local news and went viral, over 100,000 people saw it. I ended up having brain surgery because I had a brain bleed in what's called a cavernous malformation in my left frontal lobe. So I was having consistent grand mal seizures, and my addictions got even worse. My impulsivity was so high. I was getting high and rock climbing and doing all kinds of crazy stuff like that, traveling to Southern America and putting myself in dangerous situations at that time. Luckily, I'm still here, but I really hit a low point because I developed chronic neuropathy in both of my forearms, and I couldn't even do a push-up, and I loved even exercising back then, even with all my drinking and bad habits and smoking, and that really bummed me out. So I really hit like a low point with like suicidal ideation and all of that. But then I ran upon the idea that the brain can change, heal itself. That was new to me. Doctors never once told me that things could improve. It was more like, okay, you'll be on medications for the rest of your life. You need to accept with how you're feeling, so on and so forth. And something at that time, I didn't want to accept that. You know, I was going through the hamster wheel of doctor's appointments, bouncing from one to the next, and they would tell me the same thing. And when I found out the brain can change and heal itself, it was like a spark for me. I was like, okay, there is the science of neuroplasticity that does say that I don't have to be stuck where I am with my stuttering. I couldn't speak. I was impulsive. I was depressed, just a complete wreck. But that was the spark that I needed to get me to where I am today. And I mean, you spoke about addiction, so it was all about, I still have those addictive tendencies, but as you spoke about, it's about channeling that and putting it into something positive, like learning or exercise and helping others.
Well, where did, I'm just curious to know, where did you learn about the brain being able to change itself?
Sure. So I ran upon a YouTube video with Tom Bilyeu, and he was speaking to Dr. Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, Joe, yeah.
And that was like the video I saw, and he was explaining about that we have 60,000 to 70 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative. But if you change that pattern, then you can heal your brain. And so that was the spark that I needed to kind of get me to where just become a better person. Because at that time I thought I was stuck, like, you know, I'm always going to be what I call myself a loser. I look at myself in the mirror. So I knew it was about identity, an identity shift.
Well, that's interesting because Joe Dispenza may have been, and I could be totally wrong, the first person to, I think at MIT, do imaging of the brain after, I don't know what period of time or how much frequency, duration, or anything like that, of people, whether you want to call it meditating or mindfully thinking alternate thoughts, and showing the actual changes in the brain pathways. So in other words, their negative thoughts or self-deprecating thoughts were like the superhighway thought pattern. It was just like a super pathway of this dominates. But then you develop these little off-ramps into developing another super highway eventually, and that it can change itself, not just in retraining, like, learn a language, an instrument, a skill, a movement, or whatever, but actually a habitual thought pattern, which to me was like some of the coolest stuff I've ever heard of in my life. Because in that lies so much power and potential, right? Absolutely amazing. So actually, with that said, this is perfect time to go out to a break. And folks, we are talking with Dr. Brody Miller today, and we're talking all things brain. This is what I love to talk about, is brain. So you're listening to Your Health Matters on the iHeart Radio Network, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. All right, we're back with Dr. Brody Miller talking all things brain. So tell me more. So, like, you got to this point where you knew that the brain could change itself, and like, what actions did you take in that regard?
So one of the first things that I started to do was meditate. And it's interesting because I really feared neurodegeneration and Alzheimer's, dementia. Those were like really in the back of my mind because of the brain injuries that I experienced, not only from the bouncer, but football in high school, as well as some fights, other fights that I got in. And also I was having grand mal seizures, and I would experience a concussion.
Wow.
But I would sit, and I understood the science of meditation and learned from multiple people and other guys, David G. On the Insight Timer, that I used a lot of his meditations. And I remember sitting there, closing my eyes, and my head would start to shake violently. And I was like, uh-oh, like in the back of my mind, like, this is like Muhammad Ali, right? Where he developed Parkinson's and was shaking all the time. But the amazing thing that happened was when I was shaking my head, I just started to accept it and let it go. And then I had this real big emotional release. It was like my body was auto-correcting itself through the shaking. Wow. And it released a lot of trauma and stress. So that was one thing I did, was meditate. I got back into exercising. I got into learning and reading. I got into just daily studying, really just changing all of my good habits and replacing the negative ones that I had, essentially. Whatever I could do, basically, to get myself in the right space, personal improvement, I was all about it at that point.
Yeah, that's quite a story, man. You went through a lot of stuff, some serious stuff. So I'm curious to know, like, for example, now you're practicing, you're doing naturopathic health, naturopathic medicine, and you have a background in neuroscience. Has the neuroscience helped you as far as, let's say, brain health, managing different addictive tendencies, if you will? Because I mean, I know what it's like as far as that goes. And actually with neuropathy too, how's that going? I'm just curious to rephrase the question, probably more optimally, is how does your neuroscience background help with all that stuff?
That's a good question. I learned to study the brain every day, whether I was going to go, I knew I wasn't going to go to Harvard or Stanford or any of that. That was never in the picture. But what I realized is that with the age of information that we're in, that I have the capacity to learn about the brain every day. Why I did that was because my brain was broken, quote unquote. And so this was the pathway of me getting my broken brain and getting it into a good one. And so the neuroscience background was everything to me, because having dealt with my own brain health issues, when I understand the basic fundamentals of how this machine or how this supercomputer in our mind works, basically how different areas function, it's just like how your hands have a different function than your toes, and your leg has a different function than your arm. The same goes with different areas of the brain. So they know that when you damage a certain area, that you're going to have impairments and different types of impairments. So it was really the idea, like you get shot in the head, you're dead, right? And so, of course, everybody intuitively knows the brain is important, but you really don't know what you got until it's gone. So I empowered myself through learning like what's going on, why I want to improve things, and then the how to do it became pretty easy after that.
Yeah. Just writing a couple notes here because it's so, yeah, even though I can listen back. I find it all fascinating because everyone's journey is different, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone has their own, well, let's say, maybe there's a deep-seated root to why we indulge in certain behaviors, especially if they're negative and positive too. But
yeah,
so it's your own personal journey. I have my own personal journey, and I love these stories like you, where you're helping other people. And so I was just ready. You said the what, the why, and then the how.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just curious, did you ever meet Joe Dispenza?
Never spoke to him one-on-one. He had walked by. I went to one of his retreats at one point. We've looked into each other's eyes, you know. He's walked by. He was doing a presentation, and we looked at each other in the eyes and kind of maybe had a moment there or whatever. But I like him too because of his story and what happened to him, where he experienced a car accident. His spine was severed in two practically, and he made that comeback. And so that inspired me that, no, I didn't have a broken brain like the doctor said. That was their negative perception of what was going on.
So I have a question. What is a neural transformation?
Great question. A neural transformation is a transformation that is made through you creating new neural pathways.
So is it similar or maybe even the same as neuroplasticity?
Yeah, right on the same idea and pathway, that we have brain regions communicating with each other, and the brain cells will grow or they'll shrink, and depending on what we do. One brain cell right here, right here, they're communicating with each other, and they'll grow just like a muscle. We can strengthen our bicep curls. We can do the same thing with our brain cells, and the same thing, they shrink and get smaller if you don't use it. Use it or lose it. Mm-hmm. The law of repetition, the law of intensity, you know, the 5 principles of neuroplasticity. So breathing matters, repetition matters. This is my acronym I came up with, BRAIN. Breathing matters, repetition matters, association matters, intensity matters, and novelty matters.
Oh, that's a good
acronym that I use with people, is BRAIN. So if you apply those 5 principles, dude, you're in good shape.
Well, that's really cool. So, yeah, so what we'll do is we'll go out to a break in just a few seconds here. When we come back with Dr. Brody Miller, I'd love to talk about this balance between integrative and traditional approaches, and when you're working with patients, and maybe talk about some of the trauma sensitive things that you've seen, or TBIs, and what we can do to help these people recover, because there's so much to that, and I don't really know much about it, but I would love to learn that from you.
Sure.
So we will be back in just a couple of minutes with Dr. Brody Miller to talk more about the brain. You're listening to Your Health Matters here on the iHeart Network. See you in a couple minutes. All right, we're back with Dr. Brody Miller. So we talked about neurotransformation. Talk about the brain acronym again, which is, can we go through that one more time? B is for
breathing matters. Breathing is an absolute essential part of brain health, the way that we breathe, the patterns. Repetition matters. We repeat something enough times, we're going to become good at it, no matter what that is. Association matters. Who we associate and the things that we associate in our mind, it's pretty dang important. Intensity matters. So if I'm more intense, do a 10-minute exercise with intensity, or I focus with intensity, that's pretty important. And novelty matters. If I want to create new things in my life, the brain loves novelty, new things, new ideas to expose myself, new people, traveling, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that a lot. So let's get into this. I'm curious to know, when we think about like balancing the integrative medicine, if you will, with more traditional approaches. And when I wrote this question, what I was thinking about is, do you find that, are you finding there's a balance between, or anything to be really mindful or careful of when somebody comes to you and let's say they have some type of brain problem, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to take the medications maybe into mind or into consideration as to what they're taking?
Right.
And then how do you approach this from a practitioner standpoint? I come to you, maybe which I did many years ago, I was running up this flight of stairs and I didn't know the door was so short. And when I got to the top, I hit my head on the top and I was seeing stars. Let's just say I passed out and had a concussion really bad. What are you going to do with me?
The first thing I'm going to tell you is what happened. Is what happened to your brain. It was moving violently back and forth, accelerating and decelerating. So I'd explain to you that it's quite often most injuries occur to the front of the head, which is the frontal lobe. Explain to you what are the characteristics and symptoms you may be experiencing. Explain to you that the white matter, the axons, we have two brain cells that are communicating with each other. The white matter, the axons, get stretched and sheared out. So essentially, we need to make a new path for you. We need to make, it's just like a highway that got blocked off, essentially. That pathway is under construction, and we have to create a new pathway for you to do the same signals. So I'd explain to you that real quickly. If you were in person, I would do a proper assessment to see how your eye are communicating, if you're able to track things, how you are responsive to light, brightness. I would do a balance check to see if you're experiencing any dizziness or any symptoms like that. And I would be very mindful that I'm not here to get you off medications, but our only goal working together is we're climbing a mountain together now. I'm the Sherpa. That's all I am. I guide you up the mountain, and sometimes you're going to slide back on ice. You're going to slip back. You're going to feel disappointed. But all I'm here is to help you refocus and recenter yourself and get back up and climbing that mountain because of the setback.
Okay. What are some of the exercises or things you do to get somebody to make those detours or the new pathways? And does that vary on an individual basis? Like, I'm sure it does. Here, what we do, basically, we're conceptually doing the same things, but it is individualized for the person, you know? Like,
True.
what are you doing conceptually? Or you can get specific, too, with certain exercises. I'd love to know some of the things you have up your sleeves.
Sure. So you're right. It is all very dependent. No, every brain injury is different. Every brain is unique, but it's applying those principles, those 5 principles, essentially. And the main thing to consider is different things are going to be more helpful for different injuries because they're all unique. And I like to take a very wide and eagle-like approach, is look at this from a third-person perspective. Okay, we'll do some vestibular-based exercises, retraining your inner ear canals to be able to deal with the stress of dizziness. We're going to do some exercises targeted more to the frontal lobe and short-term memory, helping you remember things that you just did, whether that's through journaling, whether that's through visual memory, like that we get you to remember a certain set of colors. Use that working active memory to strengthen your prefrontal cortex. But almost every single person that I work with, I give them the fundamentals and the tools to help them integrate, because it's okay to stimulate, but we also have to integrate that as well. So we want to stimulate the brain through maybe brain exercises, brain exercises that everybody loves, activate, but also integrate. So I mean, by breathing exercises, that's going to help. It's directly correlated to memory and brain health. Meditation, just give everybody a wide variety of tools in their tool belt, and get them consistently practicing that. And of course, nutrition. I mean, there's no getting around that one because you are what you eat, and so on and so forth. Pretty wide, holistic scope, because when you improve one area of the brain, a neighboring region is going to improve because of that. It's kind of like help your neighbor. The community, we all benefit from different things.
Wow. It's a good way to put it. I like that, the idea of helping the neighbor and community, because everything in us is connected somehow to everything else. Like Perry Nicholson, our mutual good friend, Dr. Perry.
Yeah.
Talks about, and nobody can say it like him. He just has the best delivery. He says, brother, the body doesn't know anything. It's just a thing, It's like we put labels on it. The body's like, no, everything works together.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
I don't even sound like him, but nobody can because he's so unique. So, what about?
Can't sound like him because I'm from the South. He's definitely can't do that.
Yeah, and actually, we're about a minute from going to break. So, Perry has been a good friend for 10 years now. And for listeners who are, regular listeners of this show, he's been on a couple of times. And most recently, he talked about gut health, gut-brain connection. Before that, we had the lymphatic system, which he's the guy, man, the lymph doc.
Yeah.
And, he has a beautiful way of putting things. But you have, before we go to break, we have about 30 seconds, you have a podcast, if I'm correct, right?
I sure do. It's called the Rebound Your Brain podcast. Excuse my radio voice, but yeah, it's a great place where you can learn how to recover and rebound your brain just like you would a basketball player.
Great. The Brain Rebound podcast. Perfect. Okay, we're going to go to a break, folks. You're listening to Your Health Matters here in the iHeart Network. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back with Dr. Brody Miller talking about all things brain I think it might be my favorite topic too.
Yeah.
The brain is so interesting. I'm so fascinated with all this information we're able to get about brains now, brain health, and this whole idea of neuroplasticity, which I try to remember where I first heard about it, but I think it might have been from a book written by John Rady of Harvard, who's I've had on my podcast, called Spark. And he talked more in that book about, BDNF, growth factors, and how that relates to, like especially kids in school, Naperville School District, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. That school district in the 90s started having exercise before school for all kids. And to this day, as far as I know, they're still doing it because of the coach there. And I can't remember his name. He passed away. But Rady was the inspiration. And it talked about your neuroplastic potential improving after exercise, both short-term benefits and long-term. Then I got interested in this. And of course, I have all these books now, like so many, Norman Deutsch and John Rady and Wendy Suzuki and all these people. But you have a book, and I want to talk about your book called Brain Rescue. Please tell us about that book.
Yeah, I've got it right here, and it's a 90-day blueprint to reclaim your memory after a brain injury or concussion. That's what it's all about, because memory was the thing I struggled with the most after my injury. I was impulsive, yes, but my memory was really bad to the point where I was forgetting where I put my keys, my wallet. I was forgetting recent conversations that I had with people, and I just wasn't all there. I was in such a dense fog, brain fog. And so these are just all the tips, tools, and techniques, basically everything I wished I would have had at that time, all put in one to where you can come and learn basically how to become the rescuer of your own brain. And if you zoom in a little closer, it's a man walking towards his own, like a brain. And
I love that.
It shows you that it all is internal, that it all starts with a thought. We are our own rescuers. But when we have the tools, the techniques, and the ability to use neuroplasticity to our advantage, then we're suddenly able to guide and become our own heroes. All I'm doing is giving you all the techniques I wish I would have known at that time, all in one place.
That's great. That's great. So for people listening who can't see, you're not on video, this is a Zoom. We're recording on Zoom. So you can go to carlsterling.net. That's Carl with a K. Look for the episode with Dr. Brody Miller, and you can see us there and see the book cover. But I also, just for those who are listening, audio only, where can they get the book?
So right now we only have a wait list because the book's not coming out till early January, being released. But they can go to dr.bro.com/priority_list.
Or I'll put a link to that in the description for people so they can click on it and go. They can pre-order or wait list.
They can pre-order. They'll get on the wait list. I'll give them 15 free mind gym exercises. The first 2 chapters you can go ahead and read. I'll deliver that to you. And you also get 50% off of when the order, so you can save a little bit of money too.
Good, because when I interview somebody, I always have their book. And I don't have your book, and it's because I can't get the book yet. So
right.
But I'm gonna get the book. So this is great. I'm curious to know. Let's see. We're having a couple other more questions. We're talking about traumative sensitive practices, advice. What advice would you give to people? See, and we've kind of touched on this, but if you go a little deeper into this in the next 3-4 minutes, what advice do you have that you would give to people who are seeking to transform their health? And let's say even without medication, if they're not on any and they don't need to start any. And I'm not saying anybody, and I'm sure you would say if they're on medication, you got to talk with your doctor first. But what would you say to them, I want to transform my life, where do I start?
I would start all with how you speak to yourself when you're by yourself. Identifying writing out your thoughts as they come up, because that's the foundation. Most of us talk to ourselves in a way that if you went out to the street in Harlem and you started talking to people that way, they would probably, you wouldn't be around for much longer. So we have to become our own best friend in this situation. And it's all about changing your identity. You're the identity of the survivor, and eventually you'll become the thriver of your injury. But it takes time to change your identity. And how are you speaking to yourself? Are you talking to yourself like you're their best friend, or are you talking to yourself like you're your worst enemy?
Yeah, that's some really good advice there. And I can tell you that a long time ago, I knew I needed to change my self-talk. And every time I tried through affirmations, I thought I was the biggest liar. And I'm lying to myself. I could not get past it. So, being that I weighed 289 pounds, and I was disgusted with myself, I was 6'2". I shouldn't weigh that much. I just started to, through a health scare and crisis, I just telling a little bit about my own thing, is the only way I could start thinking good about myself is to do something good, and that's shed that weight, not be a diabetic, get rid of the pain in my feet and neuropathy and all that kind of baloney that was real at the time. And then I started to feel good. So action was my key. I just had to take action.
Yeah.
And this is a platform about you talking about your practice and what you do. But from my own personal experience, if you don't take action, you might not feel too good too soon. And if you're like me, and everyone's different. So maybe you don't need to take a physical action, but I did. I had to stop eating so much, get to the gym, exercise, do it, max out my credit cards. In my case, I chose to do that to have a trainer 3 days a week for a year.
Oh, wow.
Into this business. That was the coolest thing. Right? Then I met Perry, and I'm talking with you, and the radio show is so cool. You get to do all this stuff. So it can take time. It can really take time. So we have 1 minute left of airtime. Do you have any takeaway messages for people? And by the way, we're going to overtime, folks. So we're going to be going to, you want to hear overtime, there's only one place to hear overtime for extra with Dr. Brody Miller, and that's at carlsterling.net, Carl with a K. Go there, look for the episode with Dr. Brody Miller. You can listen to the whole thing or just skip right to about the 38-minute mark, 40 minutes, and you'll get into overtime and hear the extra that's going to come up. Takeaway message, though. Do you have any particular advice for people?
I would just say it takes 60 to 254 days on average on a bell curve to create a new habit in your brain. We're talking about a network of brain cells that are communicating together. So patience and persistence.
I love it. That's a great message. It does take time. We're all different. All right. Well, thanks so much for being with me today, Dr. Miller. And we're going to overtime, carlsterling.net, Carl with a K. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic week. All right. We are in overtime with Dr. Brody Miller, author of Brain Rescue, which you'll find a link in the description where you can click and pre-order and get a discount. And his book is going to come out in approximately January 2025.
Mid-January, somewhere roundabouts.
All right, 2025. So, Doctor, fascinating subject matter. Great advice coming from you, too. Now, a lot of times on the show, we talk about brain health, exercise, how that's good for the brain, resistance training, cardiovascular, meditation, positive self-talk, nutrition. And I was wondering if you have any of words of wisdom when it comes to things like brain longevity, like the brain health span of the brain within our lifespan, so that we, let's say, diminish our chances of Alzheimer's, dementia, or cognitive decline. What's your experience there, and what do you recommend for people?
Well, I'm younger, but I do have parents that are closing in on their early 70s, and it the thing that you it's important to understand that yes, neuroplasticity does become we become less plastic. The brain becomes less plastic and less flexible as we age, but it's important on a moment to moment basis to do the best thing. And the thing that I see the most are that people that are aging very graciously, it's because common sense is they're out working in the yard, they're engaging with their neighbors, they're always moving, and they're always with a positive and optimistic look upon life. And so I think aging gracefully is the key. I don't really like the term anti-aging, to be honest with you, because that's in saying it's not that. I think aging is a beautiful thing because it's something that naturally happens, and we're not given forever on this planet. So to make the best out of it, but I do believe that we can reverse biological age. I really do believe that we can. For example, I wear an Oura ring. It's a wearable that tracks sleep, but it also tells me that my heart's working at the capacity of a person 5 years younger. That because I do vigorous exercises, I take care of myself, I eat healthy, and so I guess the main thing I wanted to get across to people is that your actions on a moment to moment basis are extremely important. So you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years today that's going to be helpful for my brain? Whether that's a crossword puzzle, whether that's cognitive exercises, or using your body in a different way. It's just the same principles: breathing, repetition, association, intensity, and novelty. We need more novelty as well, like more new things in our lives, things that are stimulating to us, learning new things. Be a lifelong learner. That's the best advice I could give as a young man is you got to commit to lifelong learning.
Yeah, I like that advice a whole lot. In fact, I'm trying to think of somebody. I was just watching them on an interview in their early 90s, and they're just it's constant learning for them. It keeps them feeling fresh and new and inspired and moving forward, and they look forward to learning something. I think for a lot of us, like especially me, I need something to look forward to. I need to do things that pull me towards them. Like if I set a goal for something, and it could be something as simple as I want a certain person to come and be on my show so I can talk with them. You're one of the people.
Yeah.
And then I look forward to this. Then I look forward to, actually, I like the editing process. It's kind of weird, right? Nobody likes that. I like it because I get to do things, and there's hardly ever anything to edit out other than for commercials, right? And then I'm pulled towards this. I'm also really looking forward to the reaction we get from people. How many views do we get? What's the stay time? What are the analytics? And what kind of feedback, what kind of comments? But I'm the nerd who just needs to keep learning. You've given some great advice today that I just wouldn't have thought of in the words you said, but you're you. That's why you're here. Thank you. And besides that, always learning is we got to stay active. It's like every conversation ends up, we need to keep moving, keep learning, keep thinking. Exercise the brain and the body and do it every day. Make good choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you work with patients who have dementia or cognitive decline or Alzheimer's?
I've worked with 2 so far. I haven't an extensive background with that yet, but really my specialty is brain rehabilitation. So if you're not functioning the way you would like to, I want to get you back to baseline, whatever that may look like for you. And then from baseline, we can move on to higher performance.
So would that be things like stroke rehab or TBI, right? Brain injuries, things like that?
Yeah, strokes, TBIs. Athletes are a population that I work with because of their concern of neurodegeneration as well, especially contact sports.
Yes, sure.
Neurodiverse individuals. I've worked with some neurodiverse people and help them understand, the neuroplasticity really is the key, regardless of what that you're going through, because it's all about progress, not perfection. Like, perfection's for the birds.
There you go. So you're if people want to reach you, if they're a potential patient, do you do any online work with patients, and how do they get a hold of you either way, whether you do that or not? How do people reach you?
Sure. So if you want to schedule a time to work with me, you can go to calendly.com / Dr. Brody Miller. I can give you that link. And I do a lot of telehealth. I work with people depending on what their needs are, but usually it's a 12-week program because that's the sweet spot. Not to get too nerdy, it takes 60 to 254 days, and often the sweet spot to see a lot of change and improvement is the 90-day mark. That's why it's a 12-week program.
Oh, that's cool. I'll put a link to that in the description of everything too. So for anyone watching, listening, just go to the description. We'll have a link to the book, pre-order, and what you just gave me if you want to make an appointment.
Sure. And I'm on across all social media platforms as well, Dr. Brody Miller.
Oh, yeah, you got a pretty big following. Your Instagram kicks butt.
You're stupid.
Well, I didn't even know how that one happened, but it did. All of a sudden, it quantumly grew over the past 2 years, but
it's amazing, man.
The views go up and down. I haven't figured that animal out yet, but
yeah.
It's all about, helping people. So, hey, I got a little time left. If you do, what else is on your mind? Like, what other things do you want to share? Because this is for you, man. I want you to share whatever's on your mind.
Oh, wow. Can I share about self-sabotage?
Oh, yeah, please. Because you might be talking to the former king of that.
Oh, wow, man. So I got to be honest with people. I was on the right pathway. I was doing all the right things. And I just want to be completely transparent with people. You know about the mistakes I made in my 20s. We spoke about that with the drugs and the alcohol. So I was really on this right pathway, Carl, and doing great, financially, across the board, career. And unfortunately, in 2021, my wife's mom passed away. And I took it really hard. And in a monumental moment of self-sabotage, I have to be authentic. I drank, I relapsed, and I got in the car and ended up crashing my car into like a pasture, essentially, and was arrested for my third DUI. So in 2022, I had to do 60 days in county jail. But this, ironically, was not the worst and low point of my life. The low point was when I was dealing with chronic neuropathy. But that was a monumental moment of self-sabotage. And what I learned is that I was running from who I used to be instead of making peace with that person. And I was running so far and so fast that I had that moment of self-sabotage and the alcohol relapse. So I have to be honest.
Oh, no, I really appreciate you sharing that. A lot of people wouldn't share like that, but that's huge, man. To even share that is huge, but to, I guess, take it. It seems like you've taken this now and you're operating at a different level altogether from where you were before that.
And it's all about the concept that I have about myself. I've made peace. I've been able to make peace with that person who I didn't like, who was chubby, who was taking drugs and alcohol, and really considered himself to be a loser. I had to make peace with him because if I didn't, he's going to catch up eventually and he's going to sabotage. Like, hey, wait about me. And I said, I appreciate you. I respect you, even though that's who you used to be. I got love for you because you can't separate yourself. You are you, no matter what stage you were in your life. And so I think authenticity is our superpower. That's why I want to share that.
That's really, really just so profound. So profound, because a lot of people never get there, never come to peace. So, another thing you said too is aging. It happens naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'm grateful for, and this is just personal for me, finding a faith, that's a long story, but I won't say that one here. But besides that, is that I'm 63 and I get to be 63. There are people who are dying at much younger ages. My closest friend, she passed away when she was 36. I mean, she didn't have the opportunity to age. Aging is like, what do they call it? Somebody like Dick Van Dyke or somebody recently said it's a privilege.
Yes.
To be this old. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm really glad I'm this old and I got to get to be this old because every day I still wake up so far and I'm really glad about that too.
Certainly.
And the sabotage ain't happening anymore because holy crap, that used to be. That was me. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who can relate to the self-sabotage. They may not be authentic and ready to share yet or even face it themselves yet, but they know. And so if you're one of those people, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that you were that way because you had to be how you were at the time. You change when you can. You change when you're ready. You're not going to change sooner, even if you know you should. I knew I should for a long time. Made some of the dumbest decisions. I hurt people. Emotionally, and I made dumb financial decisions. And finally, it was like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of this, being this stupid jerk.
Yep.
And acting a different way. Oh, no, I'm okay. Everything's cool. No, it wasn't cool. It's okay to just look back, learn. What I do is look back and learn from it. Now I can laugh at it, though, because none of it was funny. But I can make it be whatever I want. Some of it is, I don't know if you ever heard of, oh man, I'm not even sure I know his name. I think it's Richard Bangler or Bandler.
Yeah.
Wrote a book called Use Your Brain for a Change, which went out of print, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere. He's like the father of neuro-linguistic programming.
NLP master.
Oh, he was like the guy, right? So then some of his people, disciples, whatever, they went off and started their own things with Tad James and the others, and they're all great. But I went through some of that coursework in New Jersey years ago, and that actually helped me a lot with taking a look at myself from a third-person point of view. Just eyes shut, and I'm looking at old me over here and new me over here, and then the current me in the middle, laughing at the old one, somewhat fearing the new one, but knowing that it could happen. But that came from that book, though, originally. And I'm not saying that's the way to go for everybody. Not everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Find your way, though. Find your way to get there, because the changes that can happen are monumental, right?
Yeah, and
we could be on a spiral upward instead of a spiral downward, which I was professional at.
Yeah, professional at that. I feel that
beaching on the way down, I can get down faster.
So I feel like our mistakes are the seeds for. It doesn't necessarily always translate into something really positive, But there are seeds when you make a really bad mistake or sample of life, whatever you want to call it. There's seeds for the opposite of that to manifest into life. So depending on what happened with you, you can transmute that energy in like an alchemist, like you can transmute that energy into something positive if you stay focused and are willing to do so.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of it had to do with my insecurities and how do I look to others, meaning what do they think of me?
Yeah.
And that was real important for me to have people think I was, a good guy and whatever. It couldn't be anything bad or I'd be crushed, right? But in reality, I wasn't really acting all that guy. I could be nice to people and help them on a lot of things, but inside I was just melting away. And of course, now you're getting back to like, how do you speak to yourself? Monitoring your thoughts. I never did any journaling. I actually thought about it again recently. I should probably write some stuff down, but
yeah.
My new mantra, one of them is, and I say this with respect to everybody, whatever you think of me is none of my business. I'm okay with me, and I just don't care as long as I don't hurt anybody. I mean, it's got to be qualified. Like, no, I'm not going to go out and steamroll anybody. I'm going to try to help people. Some people are harder to help, and I don't really want to deal with them. That's all nice,
Yeah.
I don't care. If you don't like how I do it, it's okay with me, and you can think that, and I won't be hurt.
Right. Yeah.
It's a better place to be now. I like this better.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a fun place to be. You can say, like, don't give a damn what other people think about you. Because it's ultimately when somebody's looking at you with a negative lens, it's a reflection of them more than it is of you. So if somebody calls you a jerk out on the street or says that you're this or that's how they're actually internally thinking about themselves in that moment.
Yeah, you're right about that. It took me a long time to learn that one too. Of course, I was on the other side of it too.
I know.
People like, well, that guy's a jerk. When really they're not. I just don't want to hear whatever he or she had to say. Oh, I don't like it. What an ass.
Right.
I said ass. So,
yeah.
This isn't being aired.
Hang in there, like life is definitely a roller coaster, so, hang in there and really just day by day, do what you can and move in the right direction, no matter what that is.
I love it, man. Those are great words of wisdom. Well, listen, I don't really want to go, but I should, because I got a thing coming up in 10 minutes and I can't be late. And I'm really, really happy we got to meet today. We'll have to do it again. I'm going to order the book too, because I'm really interested in this whole 90-day thing and just how your approach to it. So thanks, Dr. Brody Miller.
Thank you, Carl. And I'll have you on my podcast as well.
Well, thank you, sir. I would be honored. And for those listening who jumped onto this for the overtime and check it out, just go to the description in the YouTube channel or, wherever if you're in overtime, you're on YouTube. So go there. There'll be 2 links, one for the book and one to make an appointment if you wish with Dr. Miller. This is Your Health Matters on the iHeart Network. My name's Carl Sterling, and Dr. Brody Miller was our guest today. Thanks again, brother.
Hang loose.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.